Behind the Gloves. Danny Alvarez here in San Antonio with the one and only Steven Espinoza. Steven, been very busy with Showtime and only getting things busier here in the summertime. Saturday night, such a great fight. First time we're gonna have undisputed 4-belt champion at 154 pounds, Jermell Charlo Brian Castaño. Talk to us about the fight and what it means to have it on your network.
You know, we're thrilled. Like you said, we've had Jermell on 13, 14 times, all the way from Showbox to pay-per-view. So, you know, we feel like, you know, we've helped grow him. We sort of helped launch him, and it's great to get him in arguably, you know, his career-defining fight. It's a great fight. It's one of those that you don't have to hype. I mean, it speaks for itself. You know, the one thing I would say is that, you know, on the Castaño side, you know, probably he's not as well known here in the U.S. You know, hardcore boxing fans know him and respect him, but you know, he's a tough fight. You know, Jermell is sort of the bigger name, and sometimes a lot of people feel like, oh, it'll be an easy fight because I haven't heard as much of the other guy. This is a tough fight. He's got a tough style. He's an inside fighter. He's rough, and you know, I think he's prepared. He's fought big names before. I think this is a pick'em fighter, pretty close to it.
I mean, you guys have had a great summer schedule. You know, the Floyd Logan Paul exhibition, very entertaining, and you know, we got to have some big names on the undercard, such as Badu Jack, Jared Herndon, and such. Move forward a couple weeks to Javonte Davis in a phenomenal show, Lubin on the undercard. I mean, just talk to us about that, the fights you've had thus far. You know, coming off of a pandemic. I was just telling Jermell, his last fight was, you know, behind closed doors.
Right.
Now, you know, here to become undisputed in Texas. Just talk to us about these Showtime cards that you put on so far this summer.
Yeah, you know, look, the pandemic disrupted a lot of things, including people's viewing habits. You know, we've seen it across sports. You know, the ratings are starting to pick up, you know, now. But coming out of the pandemic, you know, there's a lot of you know, viewership decreases. You know, and I think it's just people got used to doing other things, watching other things, and quite honestly, sports don't feel the same without the crowd, the energy. You know, and it makes it less urgent. So, you know, what we wanted to do is to make our contribution is getting the sport back, you know, the momentum that it deserves. So, you know, for us, that is going consistently, going really, really often, and really making our best effort from top to bottom to put on high quality fights. So I think that's the thing that we're probably most proud of is not just the main event, but if we look at each of our cards, you know, the Javonte Davis fight, you know, to have Lubin Rosario as a co-feature, you know, to have, you know, exciting fights top to bottom, you know, including with Charlo Castaño. I think that's the other piece of it. It's you know, it's great to do one good fight, but I think to get the sport back, we need consistent quality regularly, top to bottom.
Obviously, when Floyd came over, that really took things to a whole nother level with him, right? And it seems like now, well, I guess my question is, do you feel like now, having Javonte from the beginning, do you feel like he could be that next, like, you know, superstar? We've seen him 2 fights in a row now on pay-per-view, and it kind of seems like things are picking up for him as far as like stardom. Do you feel that is the case with Javonte Davis?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this last fight was sort of even a bigger star-making performance. Did you know, an even bigger crowd this time, had a thrilling performance against a really tough, you know, Mario Barrios, and you just felt it and saw it. You know, Tank is maturing as a star. He's becoming one of the biggest names and faces in the division, and you know, and I think it's good for the sport to have a young star. You know, someone who's you know, 25 years old and has a long career ahead of him and is already generating all kinds of attention. So So look, there's some big fights ahead of him, but having him step up in the way he did. Look, we've been with, I said it before the fight. 6 years ago, Jermell was on the off-TV undercard of a Showbox fight. And to go from there to headlining the second pay-per-view in 6 years, I mean, just shows, what potential he's got.
Obviously, summer's off to a great start. It'll be a great night Saturday night. Just announced next month. Well, we got locations now. So, August 28th, David Benavidez, hometown fight against Jose Uzcategui.
Yep.
The very next day, Showtime pay-per-view in Cleveland. Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley. Just really quick, talk to us about those two fights. First off with David, being the super middleweight, I feel like a pound for pound king, arguably Canelo Alvarez in that division.
Yeah, that's a natural matchup, and I think David's another guy who is I think young potential star. When you talk about sort of who are the next generation, you talk about Tank, you talk about Benavidez, you talk about Jaron Ennis. I think those are the three guys who are really going to lead the sport going forward. And David, like Tank, like Jaron, always exciting, never a boring fight. He's got the size, he's got the maturity, and he's got the focus. So I think there's nothing but big things ahead of him. And for him to get sort of a high-profile big fight in his original hometown of Phoenix is a great opportunity for him. And Uzcategui is a good opponent. Like, he fights hard, he's a power puncher. That's going to be a slugfest.
I mean, former world champion.
Hey, brother, how are you?
With Canelo being a network free agent, have you guys reached out at all, or do you feel that maybe that's, maybe bring him over to Showtime for some of these fights with some of your fighters,
Yeah, I think, look, Canelo's the top dog, in terms of the business and the leverage in the sport. So he can do whatever he wants, but I think there's a series of fights over, that are available with us and PBC. And we're not just talking about, look, there's Plant, the obvious one to get the disputed, but you've also got, Jamal Charlo, you've got David Benavidez, you've got Plant, and that's a series of fights. There's even been talks about, maybe eventually Errol Spence moves up, fights him. So, look, the one thing we know about Canelo, he doesn't hesitate to take tough fights.
Right.
He's been collecting belts. They haven't been the toughest, most entertaining fights, but we know he's not afraid to take tough fights. So, like, finishing off this last piece of his career with the Charlo, Benavidez, Plant, I think those are the fights that fans want to see.
Absolutely. Lastly, like I just said, Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley, the very next day. I feel like a lot of people in the media thought that, David's just going to be on the co-main event to that. What was the thought process in going separate routes? And just talk to us overall about that card. Just mention some of the undercard fights for that Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley.
Yeah, I think, if we had put the events together, simultaneously or together, then maybe there could have been a way to work them out together. But the reality is, we had promised David the opportunity to fight in his hometown as a headliner. And Jake also ultimately wanted to go to his hometown of Cleveland. So, look, it's going to be a tough sledding. It's a tough job for the production people. We've never done two huge events like that back to back. It's probably going to require people, flying private late at night as soon as the Benavidez fight is over, flying to Cleveland to get there the next day. And it's a big thing. But the reality is, we're in this point where sports are like so busy right now, the sports landscape, between MMA, between football starting and the NBA currently. There's such a busy schedule. There's no openings until August, September, October, November. Really is what you're looking at. So, again, one thing we saw with Mayweather, that Sundays can work. So Jake said, okay, let's do Sunday. All the Saturdays were taken. There's a couple big pay-per-views. You have, Spence Pacquiao, the week before. So, the reality is, let's do it. Let's do it a Sunday. And I think it'll be, a really enjoyable, entertaining entertaining weekend for boxing fans.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts on these exhibitions? Obviously, you had the Logan and Floyd exhibition, and now you have Tyron Woodley, arguably, if not the best, top 2 or 3 best UFC welterweights ever.
Yeah.
And Jake Paul, you know, who made his career on Disney, then
Right.
you know, it's a big crazy. Did you ever see yourself getting into this?
No. If you had asked me a year ago, 18 months ago, 18 months ago, I said you're absolutely insane. If you would have said we'd be doing pay-per-views with both Logan and Jake in separate events. You know, the Logan and Floyd thing was sort of a, you know, it was a one-off. You know, it was something that came in. You know, Floyd brought it to us, and of course, you know, with our relationship, we're going to back whatever he does. You know, the Logan thing. You know, Logan called us, and we started a conversation. And the reality is, you know, he is committed to building a boxing career, as far as he can go. Like, he's going to go as far as his talent takes him. You know, we can't fight for him. We're not going to be able to, if he's not winning fights, we're not going to be able to push him and make his career. But the reality is, there's a ton of people interested in him. You know, and this is really his amateur career. You know, it just happens to be that a bunch of people are watching, and you know, so he will transition to fighting young boxers relatively soon. I don't know if it's the next fight, but within the next few fights, and we'll see how far his talent takes him. But you know, I think the important thing is he respects the sport. You know, he trains hard. You know, this isn't a cynical thing. Let's grab a bunch of money. You know, one-off. You know, he wants. And the other thing is, he is contributing, and he wants to contribute to building the sport. You know, and putting together an exciting card. So all those people who come to see Jake Paul, we're hoping to turn them into boxing fans, and I think that's the upside for the sport.
Absolutely. Looking forward to that. Just want to say thank you for all the great fights you guys have been putting on all summer. Really quick, if you could make one fight on your network before this year's over, what would that fight be?
One fight on this network.
On Showtime that...
I would say, you know what, I would say Canelo versus, you know, Jamal or David Benavidez. You know, I think that's a big fight, and it's an exciting fight. You know, guaranteed to be something exciting.
Steven Espinoza, thank you very much for your time.